I'm sure all of you have spent many hours now taking in the information that you've heard, the pledges that were made, the important discussions about how to combat anti-Semitism, but also the actionable pledges. We've heard pledges from participants that involved money, other pledges that involved concrete action. And as Sweden assumes the presidency of IRA next year, it will be an opportunity to assess going forward how many of those pledges have moved closer to becoming a concrete reality. I'm Hala Garani once again. It's been my distinct pleasure to host this event, to get to know so many of you today, and to really open my ears as well to new solutions to combating anti-Semitism, just as our world is moving closer and closer to practically almost exclusively online conversation schedules, because I understand his participation was confirmed late last evening. The Prime Minister of Canada, Mr. Justin Trudeau, joins us now live from Ottawa. Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Hala. Bonjour à tous et merci d'être ici.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here.
For this important and necessary forum. Stefan, these past years, you've been a strong, progressive friend to Canada and to me. I'm grateful for your and Sweden's leadership on important issues like this one, and I'm so glad you all invited me to join you all today, if only virtually. Today's discussions will allow us to continue developing a common international approach to fighting anti-Semitism. I got to listen to a few of the previous speakers, so I want to thank Ursula, as always, for her steady, compassionate leadership on this issue, but also highlight my friend Eddie, the Prime Minister of Albania, for reminding us all that it's not enough to simply say you stand for inclusion and against hatred. You need to lead with determined and resolute action like he has, like so many of us are pledging to do. Canada is deeply concerned by the surge of anti-Semitism, both at home and abroad. We must work together to promote inclusion and respect for diversity around the world, because no one should fear to express their Jewish identity or practice their religion. And no one should face hatred in their own neighborhood, no matter where they live. That's why we must continue to stamp out hatred whenever it rears its ugly head. Already, Canada has been very engaged. In 2019, we developed a national anti-racism strategy. As part of this strategy, we adopted the working definition of anti-Semitism developed by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. We will continue to firmly support it, just like we will continue supporting supporting IRA. We hope that others will join too, increasing the number of countries embracing this important definition. Canada will also continue to expand publicly accessible Holocaust-related remembrance and education materials and bring awareness to the dangers of anti-Semitism. On November 25th, 2020, we appointed Erwin Kotler as Canada's Special Envoy on preserving Holocaust remembrance and combating anti-Semitism. His mandate is to help advance Holocaust education, preserve the stories of survivors through younger generations, and combat domestic and global anti-Semitism. As part of our pledge for this event, we're now making the Special Envoy role permanent and supported by increased resources. This is in line with Canada's commitment to promote and defend pluralism, inclusion, and human rights. Education and awareness will always be key to combating Holocaust distortion, anti-Semitism, and all other forms of racism. That's why on International Holocaust Remembrance Day, Canada announced $2 million in support of a UNESCO initiative in partnership with the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. The goal of this initiative is to address the role of discrimination through education and intercultural dialogue. In July, we convened a national summit on anti-Semitism in Canada. We discussed threats and challenges faced by Jewish communities directly with government leaders, parliamentarians, members of civil society, and religious groups. We also talked about our commitment to continue fighting hate and radicalization online. While social media has profound positive effects on society, it also has a role in enabling harmful content like hate speech. Canada has supported the UN resolutions that acknowledge the role technology plays in enabling online hate and abuse. Domestically, our government has committed to introducing new legislation to address online harms. Que ce soit en ligne ou ailleurs,
Whether online or elsewhere, we do know that hate and discrimination exist, and we know that there is still a lot of work to do to combat anti-Semitism, and we have to work hard.
we're in a time right now where around the world we see an increase of polarization, of extremism, of radicalization everywhere, including in some of the most open liberal democracies in the world. In our elections, in our public discourse, and in mainstream communications, let alone social media, we're seeing a rise in intolerance. We see the organizations of extremist groups on the far right and the far left that are pushing white supremacy, intolerance, radicalization, promoting hatred, fear, and mistrust across borders, but within borders as well. We need to understand that this divisiveness that has come about as a result of globalization, of crises, of challenges, of so many different factors, indeed, the access to information that we have through the internet and therefore to misinformation and disinformation has real life consequences that we need to address as governments and as societies. Now, our friend António Guterres just likened anti-Semitism to a seismographic event, little earthquakes that shatter or challenge the multilateralism and the solidarity we have. But I actually like the way my friend Erwin Kotler points out and points to anti-Semitism as being the canary in the coal mine of evil. We've seen so many different radical extremist groups of various types lashing out at so many different things. But one of the few common things so many of them have is an acceptance of anti-Semitic stereotypes and tropes that slip into their discourse and that they build on so much of their other hatred on. That's why we need to attack directly the problem of anti-Semitism with increased urgency and focus altogether. Because anti-Semitism isn't a problem for the Jewish community to solve alone. It's everyone's challenge to take on, especially governments. And that's why in Canada, we'll develop and implement a national action plan on combating hate by working in concert with Jewish communities and our special envoy. Combating racism is something that we all need to do together. With prevention, education, and action, Canada will always be there to stand up alongside you all for inclusion, respect, and human rights. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
Thank you very much, friends.
Thank you very much to Prime Minister Trudeau joining us.
Us of their relevance today. Still, survey after survey shows the younger generations do not have even a basic understanding of the Holocaust. Holocaust denial, distortion, and minimization are growing. We must reflect, learn, teach, and act. We must remember that the Holocaust was not an aberration committed by a few terrible people, but the culmination of millennia of hatred. Remember that it was only possible with the collaboration and acquiescence of so many. And remember that a society which has no room for diversity has no room for humanity. Remember that the deaths of truth and the rejection of reason are but harbingers of much worse to come. And remember that anti-Semitism is a seismograph. The more it rattles our world, the greater the cracks to the foundation of the values of the United Nations, to mutual understanding and respect for human dignity. This is why rising racism, anti-Semitism, virulent anti-Muslim bigotry, and anti-refugee hatred we see today are also dangerous. It is why I have made tackling the root causes of intolerance and hate an urgent priority for the United Nations, including through initiatives like the UN Strategy and Plan of Action on Hate Speech, the Call to Action for Human Rights, and the UN Plan to Safeguard Religious Sites. And that is why we pledge not simply to remember, but to speak out and to stand up. To speak out wherever we witness hate, and to stand up for human rights and dignity for all. Thank you.